What is up? Good evening, good afternoon, and GM. What's going on, Macroverse and friends? It's your boy, Tiny Universe. Um, we're back. We missed a week, so what can I say? It's good to be back. I say it every week, but it feels like it's been a lifetime since the last episode. So I'm glad you're here. Anyone new? This is Tiny's Universe. This is basically the time where we go over Macroverse updates, content, news, whatever's going on, and more. Chat, see what comes out of it. But I am Tiny Universe, and I'm not going to do a long introduction tonight, but I do want to bring in my good friend Evan Matthews, as always.
Hello. I'm actually I'm impromptu sending out a link for a potential guest, so I'll just be 1 second. Vamp for just a second.
Very cool, very cool. So that would be even better because the last and first guest I slept through. So
slept through, not slept with, just to be clear.
Oh man, I still that is one of the ultimate. God, I'm so mad at myself for that. But man, a whole week off. I hope you got some rest. I didn't get.
What is this rest you speak of? This foreign language word that you are talking about.
So yeah, no, I've been working my normal job, and then in the meantime, always just telling people Macroverse, and now I've started to pick up these online sales for physicals and helping out my buddy. And
physicals meaning physical
comics,
yes, absolutely.
And so I'm diving deeper and deeper every day into comics, man. I'm just so obsessed right now. And but I'm getting my hands on so many books that I just never, I don't know, I never thought about. They never crossed my mind. And it's just it's I mentioned before the show, I just read the origin story of the shroud or the shroud. But it was so funny, man. It's so cool. And I don't know, it's completely reigniting the story crafting and the storytelling side of things for me to read these old things, and they're like, haha, you can't do that. It's so cheesy. I love it.
No, there's a style to a lot of that stuff, which is both appealing from a nostalgia point of view, and I could probably talk for 30 minutes about how how I think about I think there's kind of an opportunity about recapturing some of the essence of that and modernizing it at the same time, which is largely lacking from modern comics. But as a quick reintroduction, I am Evan Matthews, co-founder and CEO at Macroverse. Thank you for joining the live stream this evening. And if you've been tuning in for the last several weeks or months, you know that we've been kind of slowly teasing out some bigger things that are coming later this year. That is still the case tonight, but we are going to talk about some of the more recent things over the last couple of weeks, including new drops on Drip House, which are quite cool and exciting, and actually in a couple ways will tie into some of the things that will come over the next month or so. And then, I thought we could actually talk a little bit more about kind of what Macroverse is, what we're evolving into, and give a little context, which might also be helpful as we kind of move into the next phase of everything that we're working on. And finally, very much in the spirit of a perfect segue that Tiny just set up, talking about physical comics. It's a big part of this next phase that we're moving into. And the way that we're approaching physical comics is pretty unique, which will all come to be revealed over the next 30 days or so. How that will all tie back into everything we've done for the past few years will also be revealed, at least in part, over the next 30 to 60 days. So teaser. I hope you enjoyed the trailer. I hope you'll come back for the future. But what I will say is I was, speaking of older physical comics, been doing a deep dive into some very classic collections that I had not been previously aware of. And man, there is really some incredible stuff from the 40s and 50s and 60s, let alone, of course, the classic Silver Age, where basically every Marvel character was born. And just we forget how impactful a lot of this stuff is. And just one side note, so I was actually on one of the comics auction site earlier today. And made both the delightful, I won't call it a mistake because it was fascinating, but I popped up the live auction that was going on at that moment, and it was just all Golden Age and Silver Age books.
Yes.
And I found myself with this combination of excitement and FOMO and kind of a little bit of anxiety, all wrapped up together, as book after book is going for anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000, over and over and over again. Or can we get 90,000? Okay, there's only 2 copies of this that are at a higher grade that have ever been found in the world. 95,000. Can we get and it's it is astonishing and amazing. And it just reminded me that there is an element to obviously there's all the storytelling and the artistry and the craft of making comics, but I think unless you're really dialed into the higher end of the collector's market, it's easy to forget that it's these are artifacts of a particular time and place that represent culture, that represent sensibility, that represent kind of what was happening, in the world, reflected through what is often considered this kind of low art form, or this, in some cases, child's, medium. Many of these books, by the way, pre-Comics Code, are anything but for kids. But it's it's just a fascinating kind of reminder that, as with all art, I think we sometimes forget that comics are a reflection, especially in that era, of the sentiment, the vibes, the larger just the larger cultural landscape. And so looking at some of these older books that I hadn't even focused on in the past, and specifically some of the early pre-code horror stuff and crime stuff, and seeing the kind of reflection of what probably at that moment the artist and writer was kind of just doing a gig for a paycheck, but now looking back on it in retrospect, you can see this story about secret cults was something zeitgeisty in the 50s, and that how that kind of turns into Senate hearings about how comics are destroying America's youth, and that crime comics and horror comics in particular should be outlawed, and ultimately were outlawed. And so just kind of this fascinating snapshot in history that many of us will never get the opportunity to actually hold in our hands and experience. And it's in some ways a shame that those things are not more readily available, that you've got to have $50,000 to see that snapshot in time. So
I will say, though,
it's fascinating.
That's $50,000 for a slab at an auction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, but some of these books, some of the ones that I had not seen before, there's one in particular which a friend of mine, the reason I went to the auction site is a friend of mine was like, "Oh, check this out! I bet you haven't seen this," and he was right. So there's a book called, I think it's Tales of Terror #3, and it's this.
So that's what I was going to tell you. I've been reading these horror books.
Yeah, so it's this epic cover, and there's literally 6 of them that are known to exist in the world. So it's like, yes, it's a graded, slabbed copy, but this was a 3.5 going restored copy that went for like almost $60,000 today. And so it's just
it's funny because I actually got off work today and I was talking to my ex-wife and catching up with her. And of course, the only thing I want to talk about is comics. Talk about recent comic sales and stuff like Action Comics and Detective Comics #1 and stuff, and how many millions of dollars they're worth. She's like the farthest thing. She doesn't want to hear this, But she's like, "Do you have one?" No. I'll never have one.
You don't know what's in this your friend the comic dealer's warehouse, so
oh man, I wonder if he ever knows. But I told her, the funny thing is I told her, and this is why I love, Bronze Age, Silver Age, Gold Age. It's a little before me, but I respect it. It's too early.
Yeah.
But these things are treated like fine pieces of art.
Yeah.
And now, and I've talked about this with my buddy that owns the shop, like slabs are almost treated like stocks. I mean, they're almost traded like currency. Like, I mean, you've got people that have like daily trends and stuff, and they watch this. It's really bonkers the way like the trading got involved into it.
It's one of those things where, it's like this was obviously a big conversation in the Web3 NFT side of things at the earlier, days of NFTs is, that art is one of those things that pretty reliably does trend, up in value. And so, when you see, when you see these things as art, as this kind of, again, sort of snapshot in time, and that is the way that they're being treated in the marketplace, then you can very clearly see that trend. And that's not to say, not to say that every comic is going up in value. Certainly they don't all do that. But, those that find some reason to have cultural relevance do become things that people care about, and then therefore they want to have. And once people want to have things and there's less of them than the number of people that want to have them, then that's what happens. And you put a long enough time horizon on it, and you've got things that here we are 50, 60, 80 years later that have legitimately become valuable artifacts of our, kind of human history. So I don't think it's a surprise, but I think it is an area that if you're not kind of dialed into that, you don't necessarily realize that, there was, I think was it Action Comics #1 that sold for like $7.5 million a couple months ago. It's like the highest of all time. And original art is having a resurgence too. Like there are, like pages from those books, and even in the 90s now, like you're seeing, specific pages from the Image era now go for six and, even high six figures, depending on the page and who the artist is. So it's a thriving kind of niche area for art and collectibles, which is pretty interesting. And I think to bring it full circle, and I will shut up and let you talk, but to bring it full circle, I think it just goes back to kind of part of the core thesis for everything that we're working on at Macroverse, which is that, you have to find something that an audience cares about so that, emotionally and potentially long-term, financially, that there's enough impact with a big enough group of people that there is a accumulation of value in multiple areas that, that happens. And so I think, it's all the more reason to focus on, how do we create that kind of emotional connection with users, with, readers, with creators, all the way around the ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's kind of like, it's funny that you say like treating them like a artifact or a treasure. Because for me, like that's become my passion, is finding these collections that are like untouched, like basically like your collection, like 40 years from now, someone pulling it out and it's not been moved, and everything's stuck together, and you're peeling them apart, and they've never been read.
Yeah.
And they're 60 years old, but they look like they just came off the printing press.
Yeah.
And these are the kinds of books that I'm seeing lately that, like I never saw before in my life. And I'm getting a whole new passion of just like this stuff needs to be like, people need to see it, like, and that's like what got me so excited. And it's not for me. Like, I don't want to slap them. I don't want to put them, I want people to like hold them and read them and like,
Yep.
absolutely love them. But it's crazy to see, because that's exactly how I feel. I treat these things like almost like artifacts or like a piece of history. And I mean, it's really cool to pull something out that's 50, 60 years old, and it looks like a facsimile or a fake, like
Right.
it doesn't look, it looks so new.
Yeah.
And like, man, like it's just mind blowing. And it brings a whole appreciation to it. But I definitely like the whole art side. I mean, that's what it is to me. It's more than just a little story or something, like, I mean, and I guess it's cool to see there's so many other people out there that feel the same way, because, I've seen a lot of, we've talked about it, but people saying comics are dead, or, they're dying, or it's a dying culture. And
Yeah.
I mean, to see this stuff, it's like, it's tough out there. And, there's not a ton of new stuff that's like mind blowing yet.
Yeah.
But it's not going anywhere, man. Like, this stuff is thriving, really. I mean,
Well, I think it's important to make a distinction between the art form and any particular any particular expression of that art form, because I think very clearly, like, comics as a medium have never been more popular.
Yeah.
Especially if you include, including web comics and things like webtoons, and of course, all the manga, which has become, by far the biggest, area for comics readership in both, obviously in Japan, but here in North America too. Most Western comics are vastly outsold by manga collections.
I saw a big debate the other day about like, why are mangas outselling comics? As far as
I think, I mean, I have a bunch of theories about that, but I think I think a big part of it is that there is an accessibility to a lot of manga that, and this is kind of back to actually the beginning of the conversation, like whether it's cheesy or not. I think the thing that I take from early Marvel comics especially is that, and I'll mostly talk about like Stan Lee, but Stan Lee, for all the questions of who created what and where and like all of that, like what he was so good at in those early, Spider-Man and Captain America and the Avengers and X-Men and just all of that era, was within 2 pages you knew who are these characters, why do I care about them, what's going on here, the conflict here. And so you got this very quick, like, up to speed in every issue. And they had, the philosophy of any comic could be someone's first comic. And so I think there may be a more elegant way to do that in kind of our modern sensibility. And I think audiences are more sophisticated from a storytelling standpoint, but I think largely, Marvel and DC at this point, and many other publishers too, but it's like, for these things that have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of issues, it's generally hard for a new reader to jump in and understand what's going on and not feel lost and not feel like I now need to go read 200 issues of X-Men to understand, who these people are and what they're doing and why I should care and what are they talking about. And, so I think, it's a little bit of a shame that I think the success of the MCU, even as it's struggled in recent couple of years up to Deadpool Wolverine, I think they missed a little bit of an opportunity to take the fresh start that the movies gave to a huge audience and translate that into an accessible jumping on point, in a lot of cases for the comics. And that's what manga, I think, does so well, is these things tend to be much more specific in a way. So it's like there's a lot of manga is like it's a very easy to understand concept. It's a very easy to understand set of characters and conflicts. And then I think that for in many cases it's a contained story. So even if that contained story is 700 issues or 700 episodes, as some of the longest running manga is, it's very easy to go like, oh, this is cool, and go get the first book. Like those things never go out of print. When they become successful, it's just like very, very easy to go like, oh, I start here with book number 1, and if I like it, I keep going. And that format hasn't really been figured out in Western comics at this point. And so I think I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of play with, like, how do we take some of those things that are working, for manga, for webtoons, and reconceive how we deliver content, how we get people engaged in those things. And I think, I have a massive love for comic stores, having spent a lot of my youth in them. But I also think like there's more to be done to get comics into the mainstream, into people's hands. And it's where the other kind of very thriving part of the comics industry is, kind of the new YA, graphic novel market. And so my daughter is very into several graphic novel series, but they're all stuff that was born in the bookstore. It wasn't, it's not traditional superhero comics. It's, she's super into dragons right now, and it's pretty awesome. But it's like that become something that, again, is very easy to access, to see in more places, to not have to feel like you're walking into this kind of niche secret club, which we all love as geeks, but it does keep a certain segment of people from falling in love with this the way that we did. So I don't know, I'm rambling at this point, but I think there's just some lessons to be learned that require some rethinking and some willingness to test. How do we recreate some of that stuff?
So, and I'm curious to hear what your opinion is on that.
How to reconceive that?
Correct.
I mean, I think there are a couple things. One is, I do think, and actually DC is doing this right now, which I think is wonderful, is they've come out with kind of digest-sized graphic novels for some of their kind of most seminal graphic novels. I think that's a very good step in the right direction. So there are these smaller format, not quite as small as a lot of manga, but very easy to put in a purse or a backpack, easy to carry around. And because they're focused on, again, sort of contained stories, like, you can pick up this, kind of very easy to access, edition of Watchmen or, Superman for all seasons, or I'm not sure if the Dark Knight is in there yet or not, but those become, I think it's funny because I think actually what it is it's now thinking about how do you appeal to the manga audience with, some of these things, to now get that audience cross-pollinated into, some of the best that Western comics has to offer. And it's actually, I hadn't quite put it in those terms in my own mind until I just said that, but I think it's actually, it's a very smart thing that DC is doing to kind of try to reverse engineer that. So instead of saying like, how do we take manga and turn Batman into a manga series, I think it's very smart to think, how do we appeal to the things that we think are really working over here and bring that audience into other material that they think they would like. So I think there are a couple different ways to slice that, but I think that's worked very well. And then the bigger thing, which I think I haven't seen a lot of experimentation around, is just from a storytelling standpoint, and I'm very guilty of this myself in my own creative work, is that I don't think anyone's figured out quite what is that elegant way to get people up to speed very quickly. The last thing that I saw, which I think I'm not sure if anyone's doing this at the moment or not, but I remember, probably a decade ago, Marvel did used to put kind of in the inside front cover a kind of recap of like, what are the things you need to know to understand, what's going on in this issue. So sort of a previously on, kind of a couple of paragraphs and a little introduction to the characters. And I think that kind of thing is not a bad idea, both as a recap for existing readers who have gone a whole month from, reading the last issue, as well as new readers. And so I think, there's something there about, the thing that I think we sometimes, there are other mediums that do this well. And I think television generally does this well, where you're watching a show week to week. And the first part of the show is previously on, House of the Dragon. And here are the 10 scenes that you need to remember from last week in case you forgot to make this, next episode, so much more impactful. So I think there's something in there about kind of figuring out, what is that format? How do you do it in print as opposed to something that's digital or moving or video? But I think that it's an underserved component of keeping the audience engaged and kind of up to speed, and more importantly, inviting a new audience, to come along for the ride.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I don't want to keep going there. I want to keep. I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking we're not gonna have time for anything else.
No. I think it's an interesting conversation. So we talk about what's going on in the Macroverse, but this is part of what's going on in Macroverse. Is we're thinking about this stuff all the time, and so I don't know.
That and that's what I always
love the right answer, but
I always love to pick your brain about, like, especially when you're saying, like, this is what I think is not necessarily wrong, but not working.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I don't think anything's necessarily wrong with the way things are going right now. I just think that nobody's like really changed the game. I think, like a lot of us, the modern stuff is a little bit underwhelming, and you've got a lot more of like the computerized artwork going into it and stuff like that. So anytime that you're talking about what people can do to get more stuff into people's hands, especially say like the comic book stores aren't necessarily enough to to get it into the people's hands. That's what I'm like,
yeah,
what's the magic remedy? Because
well, I mean, I think digital has to play a bigger part than it ever has, because that is where all of us spend a lot, if not the majority of our time, a certain significant portion of it. And I absolutely think that the next generation of readers is going to be, if not consuming all digitally, a big portion of it certainly will be. And then I think there are a bunch of different ways of thinking about that too. Is there's digital and physical components that can work together. There are things that can complement each other. There's the whole spectrum of how to connect with an audience that wants things in different ways. Our very early part of the Macroverse thesis around comics was, if you could get an audience connected digitally, then you could really focus the physical side on real collectability. That, like, to me, like in my own personal collecting habits, it's like I'm much more interested in like access to things digitally than I am in having boxes and boxes and boxes of physical things that have to take up space at this point. And then the exception to that is things that I feel are truly meaningful from a collectible standpoint. So, when we just went back from Comic-Con, like the one major purchase that I got at Comic-Con is this giant artist edition of The Dark Knight Returns, which is, beautiful. And it has these acetate overlays where you can really see Frank Miller's line art and like really dive into that, and that creates a different type of experience that would be very hard to deliver digitally, because it's such a tactile experience of the art and the work itself. So I think from my point of view, it's always trying to figure out how to lean into the thing that it is in the best way to deliver that to the audience that you think could be there for it. And so there are certain things that, make sense, episodically. I think, something that Webtoons does so well is, give a kind of ongoing, it is the closest thing to kind of a Netflix for, comics kind of experience where, it can almost be overwhelming to find, something to read because there's so much there all the time. I think there are a lot of problems with Webtoons, which could be a whole other hour-long conversation.
Yeah.
But I think, finding, ways to kind of now go 360 with this stuff. And I think that's a little hint as to a lot of what we're focused on right now is like how to lean into the full spectrum of what you can do with this content and the different ways that it can be offered and the different ways that it can be connected, so that you can really service that immediate desire to be able to access things very quickly and easily on kind of whatever device is in your hand, and then at the same time deliver a premium collectible experience for things that maybe deserve to exist in the physical world as well. So I think figuring out the relationship between those things and then how to make that engaging and fun for users and creators and people that want to play in the way that we like to work with community storytelling and all those things. I think tying all those elements together, I think, is something that we haven't seen before, and that's kind of the thing that we're really focused on right now is how to tie all those things together. And I think we've come up with some very, 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 very cool ways to do it.
Go on.
But it is, I think, leaning into not trying to make something fit into a container that it's not meant to fit into, and instead trying to maximize the experience of the thing that you're looking at, reading, watching, consuming, etc. So that's my baseline for that.
Yeah, I think what I'm excited about is like usability, because I think for people like me, like I said, like I am like almost like that artifact collector, and I'm very careful with my books, and I'm not gonna say like I won't touch them, but I'm not just like throwing them around, and they're not all readers to me, like I might crack them open and like get a little bit giddy and look at some pages and put it away. But for me, like the usability is digital, and I found a couple that have like that extensive, like pretty much every comic that I want to read, but it's not in the format that I want to read it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of like what I'm excited about is to have that alternative to having to get either 2 or 3 copies of every physical book, or I don't know, it's just there's so much to it. But I already I feel like without you guys even having done it yet, I feel like the problems I have are being solved, for the first time, they're like being worked on.
Yeah, they're definitely being worked on. Yes.
That's what I'm excited about is, it's not that I still won't want 2 copies of everything, but it's nice to be able to have options. And then, my mind even goes to where it's, the way we've been talking and thinking of the way kids do it. And, I just look at it like it's, apparel and cups and this and that, and, a little bit of everything. And it all ties into that, one collectible that it started with. And that's really what I'm excited about. And the fact of like tying them together, man, it's just it's mind blowing. Yes. It's so much to think about. I don't know. I get so excited listening to you talk, because it's like I start thinking of all the options that are possible and pretty much probably happening at the moment anyway. we just can't talk about it.
Well, I will remind. I think what's going to be fun. What I'm looking forward to is, the way we're building out this kind of next phase is as a series of releases, and so we'll see the first peak of that in October. There'll be more in November. There'll be more in December, and then like next year, I think is going to be a thrilling ride to be on. In every capacity. So I think I'm looking a lot forward to kind of the feature release cadence where, as we do have these conversations, we'll be able to talk about, what the new projects are, what the new products are, and how they all tie into what's happening on the platform side. And just, all of those elements coming together is going to be a lot of fun. And I think in a slight contrast to how we have built things up to this point as well, like the other thing I'm honestly looking very forward to is we're doing this in a way that is really designed for audience engagement and participation. And and meaning that like you will have a chance as an early adopter to meaningfully steer the direction of some of the stuff that we're working on. And not just on the story side, but as we're having these kinds of conversations about what's the right answer to how to get people excited about a particular type of content. Like these are conversations that I want to be having, with people that are collecting things and reading things and, starting to see how these different dots connect. And that as we think about the future of the comics industry, that it's not about, me or Macroverse, trying to reinvent this. It's about, we as a community of people that love comics, as readers, as collectors, as, people that are engaged digitally and physically and, all these different things, even, and even traditional retail and direct market, like all of this is one industry that we would all like to see grow and thrive and evolve, where it's, becomes more popular and more meaningful for the broadest possible group of people. And a lot of what we're working on is not just for one segment of that. It's trying to tackle the full ecosystem, the full industry. And so it'll take us a full year to be fully implement everything that we're working on, but we're also doing it in a sort of slow and steady fashion, so that as we do roll these things out, there is an opportunity for a bigger conversation with a bigger group of people around solving some of these very real problems for a bunch of different industry, a bunch of different segments of the industry. So I'm excited about that process. I think it's going to be fun and challenging and ultimately very rewarding for all involved.
Yeah, no, man, I can't wait. I mean, it's only been a few years, What's another couple weeks?
What's another couple of weeks?
So it's
I am pretty sure at a few, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I am pretty sure we said this was a 5 to 10 year journey from the
and that's what I said, and it's really exciting to me, really, because I mean, obviously, we have a lot of fun. This is like the highlight of my week, but right now we're not streaming number one. But there's people watching, and those people are the ones that were here from the beginning. And I'm really excited for all of them, to kind of follow along for, like you said, a year from now when this is still happening.
Yeah.
And, we're talking about, not what we can't talk about yet, but when we're talking about this is happening now and this is what, it's current news and stuff like that. I mean, that's what I'm excited about, that kind of like I told you so moment that I've been saying for, so long, like I told you. That's it's just to kind of show the people that the naysayers, like, look, they've been killing it and busting their asses and people have been working, like that's going to be the payoff, I think, for me.
Yeah. Well, I also think for like, my whole perspective has shifted over the past several months where it's like, I don't even, this is with a full respect for every conversation that has been had and every stakeholder of, every project or different, level of anything and everything that we've touched or been involved in. But I think, what we're working on at this point, it's like, it's not even about belief or not belief. It's not about like, naysayers or not naysayers. It's just like, we're building some really cool stuff and the people that decide to come along will be happy. And I do not mean you're going to get rich by what we're doing at all. What I do promise is, we're going to work our asses off to make some really, really cool stuff and to try to move the industry forward. And that's the focus. And there will be some opportunities along the way for people, but it is not the model that I think has been the topic of conversation for the last, couple of years in specifically in the Web3 space. I mean, we're really going mainstream. So I think we talked about this a little bit in the last couple of, conversations, but I think I've just become fully convinced. And, I think that Web3 going mainstream is absolutely never going to happen. What's going to happen is mainstream is going to get Web3 magic and not even know it. And then, realize that there are some really cool things that you can do with these new technology, and they'll never even need to know. Like, this is going to be our little secret from the last 2 years.
Is people are going to start using it. And then the people that aren't using it are going to be like, how the hell are you doing that?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, well, I want to do that.
Yeah. And how come the other things I'm using can't do that? Which I think is going to be a really fun, interesting component. But I think there's a famous quote from, I can't remember if it's from A16Z or like one of the major technology venture capital groups. I'm pretty sure it's from one of the founders. He says, most significant technology evolutions, the first version of it looks like a toy. And we're working on some toys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm excited about. Again, like, I feel like, even in the Web3, in the beginning of the Web3 side, like, it wasn't just another PFP project. Like, it's been breaking the rules and, doing things that was kind of like ahead of the time. People weren't really ready for it. And then people started to do it a little bit thereafter, and it's like, I feel like that's what you're doing now. But again, like you said, going more mainstream, and I'm excited to see the outcome. And when, when we start talking about it, what people start to think and, all that good stuff.
We're just making stuff that's fun and cool, and it just happens to have some cool tech involved.
Yeah.
I think that will lead to some very, very cool opportunities for a bunch of different people in a bunch of different ways, which is very cryptic of me to say over and over again, but I'm going to keep saying it.
But speaking of some cool tech, Drip House, Web3.
Yes. Yeah, let's talk about some recent Drip House activity. So I'll start here with the Digital Pools channel, which is now live. And as of yesterday, Digital Pools did their first drop. So if you're on Drip, if you're not on Drip, Lady Valor, I am talking to you. I don't know why. I don't know why not. It's really fun and really cool. So maybe you can tell me why not at some point. But Digital Pools channel is up. This has been a little ways in the making, and what Alex and Matt, who are the creators of Digital Pools, have in store, I happen to know some of the plans, and I think the way they're thinking about this right now is exceptionally cool, and I think people are going to very much enjoy coming along for the Digital Pools ride. Definitely encourage people to follow and get ready for their first drop. I'm pretty sure it's actually queued up right now. So they did this surprise, Exodus Curiosities drop yesterday to people that had already subscribed to the channel. I know they've got some plans of how to extend this into other things, but man, the the additions that I've seen of what they're going to start dropping over the next little bit, it's some of the best stuff that they've done. And, if you've seen any of the Digital Pools series or any of the work, that is high praise indeed, because it's all very awesome. So definitely check that out. And then I am happy to announce that we've got the next season of DMC drops well into production now. So the first of those will land in October as well. There's going to be a lot in October, actually. So there's new DMC
I was just going to
stuff.
say, everything is happening in October.
Everything is kind of lining up for October. Yeah. So there's going to be.
Like, for me, it sounds like Christmas is coming in October.
Christmas is definitely coming early. Yeah. So some great artists in the pipeline for new drops on the DMC channel. We're planning some new perks and rewards for DMC crew members and record holders. So there's going to be some fun stuff coming there starting in October. And then on the Macroverse channel, I'll just talk for a second. The first of our kind of ultimate perks, which is the million droplet level, has now been delivered, and I am very, very happy with how this came out. So taking a slice of what we've done with other projects, what this tier is essentially a million droplets. We will then take any character or PFP of your choosing and produce a full comic episode based on that character, and also based on any concepts or ideas that the person who contributes as droplets wants to contribute. In this case, Desenka, who is one of the most prolific collectors on Drip House, took us up on this offer. This is a PFP that he owns called Hell Chad. Obviously very Hellboy inspired, very intentionally. And then after a couple conversations with him on Telegram, we came up with this basic concept, which included another of his characters, this kind of Skeletor type of character. And then because it's on Drip and we thought it'd be very fun, we made this a little story that involves a golden artifact, a golden droplet. And so, I wrote this, and then phenomenal artist who's done some work on Vogu and Bushido's, joined me for the episode. And there's a real possibility to extend this, because we're setting some things up here in the story that, it may not be 100% obvious unless you kind of understand a little bit of where my mind is for where it's headed. But in classic Hellboy fashion, he stumbles across some kind of arcane ritual. Had a lot of fun writing dialogue for this Skeletor character who's talks in the third person and then taking a little attitude from Hellboy. Here he is, kind of taunting him, and then Hellboy's just, in this case Hell Chad, straight to the point, just, I hate the way you talk. I'm amusing myself. So they have this face off. Oops, the page isn't loading. They have this face off, and again, just love what Adrian did with the art. So I think, quick side note, what I love about Adrian's work is it does have a slight Mignola-esque feeling to it. So for me, this really captured the kind of Hellboy aesthetic without being a copycat. So it's got this kind of, I don't know, kind of wood carving or something about the line work that just feels kind of more, the word that's there for me is kind of old timey, but that's not quite the right description of it, because it doesn't feel outdated, but it's got this kind of, almost like you could see this on a tapestry or, something like that. There's an element to that, which I really like. And so our Skelly Chad character uses the golden droplet to conjure a magical dragon. I talked about my daughter being really into dragons right now. So you always bring your own personal life influences into the story. And then Hell Chad gets attacked. And then what isn't necessarily obvious as to why it's happening, but I'll explain as to where this could go. Unlike Hellboy, Hell Chad has these mysterious magical runes that go down his arm, and they can be utilized to create a kind of overwhelming amount of power, but stealing a little bit from Spawn. When the Abomination uses its power, the Abomination being Hellchad, it's weakened because it's using some of his own soul, the power of his own soul. So essentially counting down, running out the clock on his ability to stay on Earth instead of being banished to hell. There's a finite amount of that power. So Skeleton reaches for it. He says, "Go to hell," using that power once again. Sends this guy through a portal into hell. And then the hint towards what's going on there is he says, if he keeps going like this, I'll see you there. That's the little tease at what's happening with his power. The golden droplet drops, and then interestingly, the energy, kind of tattoos or carvings on him turn yellow as he picks up the golden droplet, suggesting that perhaps something has now changed and leading to a new beginning. So that's our kind of pilot episode or setup for what could be additional Hellchat episodes, but I had such a fun time writing this and then putting it together with Adrian. It took us a couple months longer than we wanted it to actually produce the whole thing. And it was a tech complication in there and a health complication in there. But we got it all done and finally out. So very, very pleased with that. And, these episodes are available to all of our followers, with the Sanka, of course, getting the 1-of-1 as part of the deal. So that is the most recent release on Macroverse, and we got some other fun things planned over the next few weeks as well, with the next drop coming on Sunday.
Very nice.
Indeed.
Yeah, I saw that a few days ago, I guess. I remember I posted in the Discord, and everyone's like, "What is that?"
What is that?
I'm like, "Well, go look. Or come watch. We'll talk about it."
Well, that one makes me happy because I feel like it is one of the things that we're pretty uniquely capable of doing based on the mix of things that we've been doing. So being able to produce that thing to begin with, and I think do it at a quality level, which I feel really proud of. And then at the same time,
I was going to say it looks phenomenal. I mean, it looks better than most indie comics. I mean, I see a lot of indies with good covers, and you open them up and you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
And it's
I've become a big fan of Adrian's work. He did a Bushido story, which I love. He did a Vogu story, which I love. He's done this one for us. I'm looking for a little bit of a bigger project to try to pull him in on, because I do think there's something about it. I mean, this actually opens up a little can of worms, but leaning on that for a second, I think that's another thing which I miss in a lot of mainstream comics right now. Is I think things have largely started to kind of have the same aesthetic, and it's something that was so wonderful about the indie comics of the 80s, and then into Image, and of course the mad popularity of artists like Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld in that whole era. People had really recognizable, unique styles, and I'm not saying that doesn't exist at all at this point, because it certainly does, but I miss that kind of real recognizable, I know this is that guy, because you can tell. And I think there are a lot of really incredible illustrators and draftsmen and draftswomen in the comics industry, but I think the style uniformity has become more of a sameness than we've seen in my experience in comics as a collector. So I love it when I discover artists that are kind of really doing their own thing with what feels like their own unique voice and unique style. It's something I really respond to, and I think that's part of why I like Adrian's work so much. There are a good number of those artists on Drip House, I must say. As more and more creators join the platform, I'm continually discovering new people that I think are really doing something cool.
So, is the new DMC rollout, is that going to be more of the collabs?
more collabs as we ramp up to the first releases that are going to be tied into the actual series and storyline.
Yeah.
And actually, we had a really wonderful meeting with a potential writer and possibly lead writer on that series today. So excited about
just gonna say, like, how much of that's done, like
yeah, we are actually still pretty early in the process. We've got a really solid concept and roadmap for kind of where we think the series is going to go. It's been a little more challenging than I had initially hoped that it would be to find exactly the right kind of lead writer for the series, because we're trying to do something very specific, and because it's DMC, and we try to do this with all the projects, but with this one very much the quality bar is set very high, and we really want this to be something meaningful culturally. So I think we may have found, if not the person, one of the people in the conversation today. So very, very good vibes all the way around. But the next batch of drops is also extremely exciting to me. I mean, one of the things that why I'm so excited about the DMC project in general is that it's a big creative canvas for people to take something recognizable, very notable and meaningful in pop culture, being DMC himself and the history of Run DMC, and then put that through their own lens. And so that concept of, who could DMC be in basically any concept, genre, storyline, concepts like that to me is very exciting. And seeing how people have interpreted that over the last, 6 months or so has been awesome. Like every time I get something from one of the artists that we're working with, it's just like, so hats off to everyone that has done something with us so far, and very excited about the stuff that's coming as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of what's coming, what else?
What else?
I will say, no, I already know where I was leading with that, but I want to say we did the I don't know if we're wrapping up. I mean, where are we at with Maker's Room? I mean,
I think we're wrapping up for this round. It doesn't mean it's closed, but I think we've got your script, which has now been officially greenlit. We've got Matt Mazzaferro's script, which has now been officially greenlit. So we'll be starting to get those to artists. And in your case, we already have the artist attached. In his case, I need to go back to the artist from episode 1 and see if he's available, or if we need to bring somebody else on. I'm hoping we can pull the same creative team back together for that one as well. Or at least, if not, we'll certainly be going for a similar vibe. But
if it's not the same team, it's going to be hard to
hard to beat. But I do there is somebody else that I have in mind that would also crush it. So my ideal scenario is that it is, but I think we've got a good backup plan that everyone will be happy with. Nice. But both of those will be moving into the art stage and into production. I know we've got Matt's working on a Vogue story, which might squeak into this round as well, since it's pretty far along. I was hoping for more Mercy Sisters, again calling out Lady Valor, but they may have to wait till the next round. So we're not closing the round by any means, but I think as far as committing to like weekly sessions with this is now moving into production, we may be continuing to like go ahead and submit stuff, go ahead and put stuff up, and we'll certainly give feedback and continue things moving forward. But there will be another official kind of start date for the next batch of material coming a little bit later. But very happy with everything that people have done, and with you, and I'm very excited about the next episodes for what you and Matt did as well. So very cool.
I'm excited.
And I think for anyone watching this, doesn't know what we're talking about. Like we do, we have done now weekly storytelling sessions, or close to weekly storytelling sessions in our Discord for the last 4 months. And what I love about that is not only do we get the result of that in the form of now at least a couple more episodes, moving into production, but also there's a whole history on the Discord of the process that we went through. And so for anyone that's interested in comics and storytelling and how do you make these kinds of things, like this is now an archive that's freely available for anyone to come and see. It started with this idea, and then we had this conversation, which is recorded and posted in the same thread, and then that turned into the next set of kind of story outlines or points, and then that became a conversation. And so over the past few months, like there's multiple steps that we've gone through that anyone can go and revisit and kind of follow along and apply to the work that you're doing yourself. And so it serves both of those purposes simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I know it. And I'm still excited for the first round or first. I guess some of them have rolled out, but the other ones still to kind of make their way.
Yeah. Let me say something about that, because I feel like the rest of the anthology stories rightly feel way late, and it's actually this is an area where I should have reached out to each writer individually. So I'm saying it now, and we'll make a follow up for it too. Most of them are done, and we're just sitting on them. And the reason we're sitting on them is we want to put them out in a way that's going to have an impact. And so I think just putting them out just to put them out, would be cool just to have them out in the world for sure. And if anybody who's participated in these wants us to do that, let me know, and we could do that. What I'd like to see happen is that we pick a moment over the next several months as we're ramping up this kind of next phase of everything that we're working on, where these actually land with a like, oh my God, like look at what this thing is connected to, everything else that is now coming out. So that's the reason for the delay. Not that necessarily makes it any better for anyone.
I will say if it makes it any better. I wasn't trying to rush you. I was just saying.
No. I think it's worth addressing. It's worth saying. I didn't.
Honestly, with mine personally, and I don't know how anyone else feels. I think in the Discord, I maybe saw a post or two asking if they were still happening and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just always assumed like it's just waiting for the best time. I mean, I've seen, almost finished product, and I'm so excited. I just, it's not one of those things I would want to rush out. I'd rather wait and do it the right way.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's worth addressing, and I don't, not sad to bring it up and talk about it. So I think, Chris, I saw his comment in particular. So Chris, if you happen to be watching this, and I will message you directly as well, promising on live stream. If you do want to just go ahead and put them out, we can do that. But I think there's an argument to be made for waiting just a little bit longer for them to have a bigger.
And personally, I think like, for me, I think it would be cooler to release them all at the same time as like the anthology series, or
at the same time, or at a regular cadence. Like I think those are the two.
Yeah. But no, I mean, the work that was done is phenomenal, and I'm just excited for people to see it because I've seen some of it.
100%. Yeah, and maybe it makes sense to put them out on Drip in the meantime too. So I think there are some. There are some options there. I think they feel to me like they have the most impact when they're connected to the thing that they were derived from, like to the world, to the characters. And so I have a way that we're planning on doing that, but again, I'm not opposed to putting them out if people really, really want to see them come out earlier. So hit me up if that's you. And other than that, I think that's a good place to wrap up for the night. So it's what's going on. We've got a big meeting tomorrow, which I can't say what it is, but it's very cool. So keep that in mind, and then start planning for October. So yes, Christmas for Halloween.
Yep. For me anyway.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think it will be for a lot of people who don't even know who we are at the moment and are about to find out.
Yeah. Well, very cool, man.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have too much else going. I'm gonna probably. I see a question.
A question from Lady Valor. Yes. Shoot, as we're wrapping up here. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh man. I'm so curious what it could be.
What is it? Typing. Well, while we wait another moment for a potential question, what is the most exciting thing that you've gotten your hands on over the last little bit?
Spider-Man #1.
Like an actual, like a reader copy?
So my friend actually he bought a PGX slab. It was like a 4.5. It had never been cleaned or pressed. And he bought it, got to him, cracked the slab, and he had it cleaned and pressed, and he has not re-slabbed it. So it is in its raw form, and it is very beautiful and
amazing.
I don't think I have the cojones to actually handle the book itself, but I've held it in a very strong case. It's just been like, oh, this is amazing. No, that's probably the coolest book I've ever held. I mean, I don't know. When you look at value, anyway. For me, again, like I said, I just got the Hulk's origin story, and it's a reader. It is a reader, and I'm really excited about that. I mean, I've not ever had that, and I'm excited to tear that open.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Well, I also think you're not taking your life in your hands. You're taking something in your hands when you handle something that is could just disintegrate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's Lady Valor's question. She says, would we then go back and push Matt's story with the same treatment? So what she's talking about is the one episode that did get released so far of these anthology series is the first episode from Matt's Deadtown now ongoing series. Initially single episode. So that has gone out on the Macroverse mobile app. And is up there right now for anyone that would like to read it at the moment for free, as are all the episodes on the mobile app available for iOS and Android. So her question is, would we go back and push it out with the same treatment? Meaning that however we put out the additional stories, would he kind of go back into the same, would he be treated, I'm guessing kind of fairly. So would it? You would like to see that story get highlighted more because it came out phenomenally.
So completely like a redrop.
Yeah, essentially. So I think that the way things have evolved and where we're kind of headed with this is there will be a big re-push for some of the stuff that has been released already, or I don't want to say it quite that way. There'll be a way to expose new people to material that they haven't seen. Let's say it that way.
We're a little bit over. This is like my alpha question because I'm probably pushing buttons here. I don't know, but with everything happening, I mean, you've got you're crossing so many lines and boundaries, and you've almost got a whole new brand. I mean, are you guys looking at rebranding and relabeling and logos, anything like that?
It doesn't get any better than Macroverse. I think there'll be some ways to delineate some of the different areas that we'll be playing in that I think will help make sense of how these different things tie together. But as an umbrella, I mean, I think we couldn't have hit the nail better, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
than Macroverse, because it just encompasses everything that we want to do. So
Perfect.
yeah.
I mean, I would hate to see, I don't want to see it go anywhere. It's to me.
Yeah,
it's,
we'll be expanding the Macroverse, not leaving the Macroverse.
perfect.
100%. Now we just need some merch. I think that's how I'm.
Oh, absolutely. I've been saying, like, I can't wait to wear some apparel or something and just rock it. But man, I can't wait to start like stuffing boxes full of like physical collectibles. I don't care what they are. Just let me buy them.
Fair enough. All right. I'll remember that you said that. And on that note, have a wonderful week. Where can people find you if they want to get a hold of you, Tiny?
Oh, let's say Discord as always. But Twitter at Secret Agent Tiny is going to be probably the best place.
Perfect. Discord is discord.gg/Macroverse. And you can find me also in the Discord or on X/Twitter at Ebenverse, personally, or at Macroverse for the company. And follow all the Macroverse related channels on Drip, and follow along and get ready for October. We'll have a lot of fun. All right, man. Thank you so much for hosting as always. And we'll be back same Macroverse time, same Macroverse channel